Hi, Crystal. I enjoyed listening to your video. I wanted to focus on some things that you said. You mentioned how it's important to reflect on our good professional development and bad professional development experiences because it can affect the approach. Because we all know that if we've had some bad experiences in professional development, we all kind of approach the topic of professional development with some negativity. So I liked though that you mentioned how it makes a difference to know the why we're going through the training, knowing that end goal. And it made me think of the objectives that we often post in our classrooms, in the general ed classroom for our content or language objectives, so that our students know what our goal is that day and how we will be reaching that goal. And I've been in one of my districts that I had taught in before where I am now. They always began our professional development with our learning objectives so that we understood what our purpose was and our goal and why we were doing that. And so I do think that can be beneficial. You also mentioned having an agenda prior to professional development, and I think that that just helps lay the foundation for what the expectations are during that time together. It also lets you as the teacher or us as the teachers kind of be prepared as to what information to come with. And it almost gives us like that uh, time to reflect and think about those things that we'll be discussing, so that they're kind of at the forefront of our thoughts prior or approaching professional development. And I think it's incredibly important as the trainer or as the person that is coming in to present. You mentioned knowing your audience. And I think this is where, if we know our audience, we know what information they may have or have expertise on. And so we can get that information and use their strengths to help guide and praise those, help guide the instruction, and then also to praise them and use them as maybe experts depending on what the training is about. And you also mentioned if we know what we're learning will work, we'll be more willing to do the learning. And I think that's where it's important that we are using those research-based strategies and those research-based curriculum programs rather than just saying I found this online somewhere. And so I think that's important as we're presenting to have that foundation and understanding that what we're bringing to the table is research-based. I think that will make a big difference. I like that you also mentioned that you sometimes have to swallow your pride, which we have all had to do. I think that's what all professionals do, teacher, not teacher, it doesn't matter. But it's okay to recognize that we were doing something that maybe wasn't the most beneficial for students, even though our intentions were good. That isn't really what was working for students. So I appreciate your honesty there, because I know I have been in the same situation where I've had to call a teacher even and say, listen, I am sorry because you were doing what is best and what is right and what's research based, and I didn't realize how important that was. When I was in the general ed classroom, and the dyslexia therapist was always needing to get my students, because it's in their 504 plan, and because that is research based on how the dyslexic students learn by going to her class and to her program. But I was more concerned and focused on STAR and needing them to have those strategies in place to take the STAR test. And so I would often push back a little bit with her. And so I just had to go to her and apologize after I did all my research, which she had already done. She was further along in her career and had much more experience with dyslexia learners. And so that was a time when I had to swallow my pride and recognize that she knew what she was doing and it was what was best. And so that certainly had an impact on the way that I approach any teaching and the way that I communicate with others. So thank you again for sharing.